presenting your host for the Racecoin podcast, Jay.
What's going on, my Racecoin fans? I'm here with Pierre Kaffer, a German race driver, the winner of the 24-hour Le Mans, 12-hour Sebring, and Petit Le Mans. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks to be there.
Yeah, so you've been, in the game since 1990. It's almost been 30 years since you've been in the game. So, what do you wish you had known when you started out?
Well, when I started, it was 1990, as you say, and at that time it was a bit different in racing than it's like today. It was a hard period for myself, and at that time I did it because I wanted to drive go-karts, and I didn't have a clue what's coming up next. Like today, the kids they're dreaming about Formula One, and for me, I never heard about Formula One at that time. It was just because I grown up on the famous racetrack Nürburgring, where the Nordschleife is. It's one lap is 25 kilometers, and when I was there and I drove the first time a go-kart, that was for me the thing what I would like to do, and then I started because I had fun with it.
I understand, but what led you to that world of racing? Like, did your parents take you there? How did you manage to get into the sport?
Oh, that was nothing at all. It was just because I wanted to drive a go-kart when I have seen as a kid at Nürburgring, there's little go-karts driving around. So I asked my father if I can drive, and we bought a ticket, and that was the start of it.
Nice. So how did you then kind of cultivate or develop that unique skill that's yours, that's your strength that allowed you to become successful?
Well, I drove 3 years in karting, and the last year was very successful. And from home, my family doesn't have the money like other kids have, so it's quite difficult for me then to get further. But there was a race in the end of the year where the best karting pilots attend there, and I had a problem qualifying. I drove from the last to P3, and there was someone who showed me a picture of a Formula Ford car, which in England was very famous to drive in Brands the Final. I never heard about this, and he invited me to drive a test in Formula Ford, and that was, let's say, the beginning of the swap from karting to single-seaters. And it was also there. I drove race by race. I never had a season fixed. So, I was also quite successful there in my first year. And that was where I always start to get in the next step and in the next step. But you cannot plan a career. And especially at that time, it was just for fun. And I had to go to my school, and I did all my work at home. So it was my number one motorsport. But on the other hand, we also had to watch for some sponsors and partners and people who like to see me racing.
So talk us through that journey of actually getting sponsors, because obviously that is a huge deal. Everyone I've spoken to ever has mentioned, the fact that money is one of the biggest things. It's not possible for you to go anywhere without having enough money or having sponsors, right? So what was your journey to getting sponsorship and really kind of changing from something that was a hobby to something that you're taking seriously?
Oh, well, it's really hard, I have to say. Like I said, when I did the swap from karting to single seaters, I run around myself to all companies where I grown up and collect 500 marks. That at that time it was Deutschmark, not euros, or 1,000. Or one company bought me 2 sets of tires, and the other one bought me this, and I get material. And I had a lot of small stickers on my Formula Ford, but in the end, it was nice that people helped me out like this, and that was my first step into sponsorship. And of course, when you grown up, the biggest one for me, it was Formula 3. To switch from Formula Ford and Formula Opel Lotus then to Formula 3, we are talking total different budgets. And from that budget, I was in a lucky position that at that time D2, which today is Vodafone. They created a racing family, and at that time it was Michael Schumacher, Alexander Wurz, and I was in the newcomer range, and they took me into this racing family, which was for me a milestone, let's say like this.
And I think obviously that went and transformed, and progressed your career from then on, right? How is it that someone like yourself, I mean, what is that? Do you feel like there is a unique skill to what you bring when you're on the track compared to other people? Like, where do you feel like your strength lies in comparison to other drivers?
Well, I think my biggest strength is that I learned everything from zero on, and I'm not just a racing driver. I also understand the technique of the cars very well. And when I learned my job, obviously I learned my job as a car mechanic, but I never worked on normal road cars, even when I had to visit the normal school. But I did at that time. I worked for Zakspeed, and I started on the DTM and ITC cars of Klaus Ludwig and Jörg van Ommen and co-team and all the names. And at that time, I learned very much about the technique stuff on a racing car. And I think this is helping me quite a lot, especially when you see the new generation now. They know a lot more about simulators. And they have all the mechanics and engineers, but in the end you also need to understand the car and to localize where's the problem of understeer or oversteer or whatever you have as a problem on the track.
I understand. So one of the things that obviously separates you is your strength of understanding the car and, localizing the problem a lot more than others. But where is your weakness at? What do you feel like, this is something that you're not good at, or, you feel like you really want to get better at? Is there something after this long that's still left that you feel like you want to, tick off?
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm not so patient. So sometimes I want to things having quicker, and I know, okay, I need to wait. I need to be more patient, and I think this is my weak side. So because everything what I do with love, and I want to be successful. And if things not happen like I thought it could be like this, then it's hard for me.
Are you referring to more on the track or off the track?
No, on the track, of course.
On the track. Fair enough. And so talk us through how that translates into the endurance races that you want to do rather than others.
I love endurance races because endurance races is much more not only driving. Endurance races, you have to calculate your strategy. There can happen so many things in an endurance race. Even from the driver's side, you can save fuel, you can keep the tires alive for a double stint or triple stint, for example. And all these things together with all the things what happen in an endurance race when there's a yellow flag or when there's a safety car period to react. And also sometimes the driver has to take a decision on a certain point of the track to pit or not. And if you work with a team very well together and you are, let's say, like one person, that everyone is working in the same direction and there's no misunderstanding and you understand you both of the sides very blind, then you can be very successful.
I mean, that completely makes sense. And I feel it's very difficult to understand that as a spectator, as someone who's in the audience, what sort of things really go through the mind of someone who's racing along with the whole team. What are they really all kind of, how the cogs all kind of combine and fit together perfectly to allow you to be the best that you can be on the track. So what is a common myth that is related to racing?
As I said, you need, as a driver, you always need to build up the team in a direction where you feel you get the best support and you have the best race car. So for that, to develop the car on the setup side, on one side, but also to help the mechanic. For example, in the pit stop, what is the best strategy, how the driver gets out, the other drivers get in, and the mechanic runs around, and how to put the wheels on, that nobody is in, let's say, in a situation which he feel uncomfortable. So, and let's say when I won Sebring, Le Mans, and PT, these are 3 classicers, and we worked very much in that year for it. That Risi Competizione and myself, we were like unique. We beat other people which has a lot more money or much more budget, and you only can do this when you train everything and everyone works in the same positive way, and everyone can trust and relate on each other. Let's put it that way.
I mean, that trust and that loyalty, and that's something that you have to just build over time. It doesn't obviously come overnight. And throughout this journey of yours, were there any resources that you felt have really helped you along the way on this journey?
Well, I think I'm very flexible. I have a good hand for people. I have a good hand for my teammates, and I think right now in my period, I started endurance racing with Audi with the LMP1 2004. And right now I'm in the GT3 program of Audi customer sport. So I have to do a lot with different kind of people, and to handle everyone, and to get on the racetrack, and to bring always the power and the lap times and everything. This is a combination which I think this is one of my strengths, to put everything together.
I mean, to lead that on to what you've actually organized in February in the Swedish Laplands with driving sports cars on frozen lakes. I mean, I think there's no better example of that. So can you tell us about what that was like and how that idea came about and what it's all about?
This is something which I really like. I like to work with people, and I start to create something in Swedish Lapland. And I always have my personal wise, I renting a frozen lake, and I would like to keep it a bit exclusive, because I'm the instructor and I try to organize a very nice event up there. And we drive with sports cars, we drive with Porsche, with McLarens, and we change, for example, the tires with studs, that we have a lot of grip on the ice. And it's a 2 or 3 days program. I have always 1 week, and this is very good to get a feeling of a car and to catch the car again and to drive sideways. And I'm not talking about programs where you can drive in first or second gear. I created some race tracks or some tracks on the ice, which from the skills, it starts with an easier one, and then we step up to a difficult one. And in the end, we drive 140, 150 kph on the frozen lake, and this on ice is really, really fast. And we are not driving this only straight line. It's a combination of corners where you really have to pitch, and where you really have to be quick on the steering, and also line of view where you need to look. And I think if you drive then the car by your stomach and not to think, because when you think to steer and to look and what I have to do, then you're always too late. And the good thing is nothing can happen. If it goes wrong, you're stuck in the snow wall, which it need to be on one point, because someone need to pay the wine in the evening. So, but in the end, it's I do this now since 4 or 5 years, and progressive. I have a good name up there, and it's always a lot of fun. And if people like to come, they should contact me, and they come with me then next year.
I mean, that sounds more riskier than a normal race. I'm not sure why you're saying you can't get hurt. I don't think there is ever a case where you're driving more than 100 kilometers an hour in any scenario where there's not a possibility of you getting hurt, right? Let alone on frozen lakes in the middle of nowhere. So I'm not sure what level of risk factor we're talking about here. Still, it's definitely something that is... sounds like a lot of fun. And one of the things that you famously said is life's a race, right? So if heaven does exist, what would you like to hear, God say to you when you arrive at the end?
Yeah, life is a race. I mean, for me, racing was always on number one, and racing is all my passion. And so that's, for me personally, my life is my race. So, and I love it. It's like a drug, racing, put it that way. And if I knock on the door and I say, here I am, and they open the door. So hopefully they put me on the spot with all the former racing drivers. Like I would like to talk with James Hunt, for example.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. And I don't know, maybe they have racetracks up in the air. We never know.
Who knows?
Who knows this?
With even faster cars and even better tracks.
So, and that's something which I think hopefully it will happen, that they say, hey, come here, get in there.
Get in the car. That's it. First things first. Put on the helmet. Get in. No words. Just a car ready for you. Here you go. Nice passageway straight to heaven. Yeah. Sounds like a dream. And sounds like a plan. And it's been a pleasure having you on the Racecoin podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me there. And all the best.
If you like this episode of the Racecoin podcast, go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified every Monday when a new episode is out. And don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.